The town didn't have a name worth remembering, just another collection of rotting wood and broken promises squatting in the shadow of the mountains, where men came to forget what they'd done, and women came because they had no choice. The main street was a scar of dried mud splitting a dozen crooked buildings: saloon, general store, boarding house, smithy. All of it presided over by the land office, where debts were bought and sold like grain. Clara Whitlock had been in Ashford's Landing for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that anyone asked, not that anyone cared. She knew because she counted. Every morning she woke in the storage room behind Ashford's general store. She scratched a mark into the wooden beam above her cot. 3 years of marks. 3 years of waking before dawn to haul crates, scrub floors, serve customers who looked through her like she was glass. 3 years of Thomas Ashford reminding her exactly what she was: property, collateral, a debt with a pulse. Her father's debt, to be precise. $1,800 he'd borrowed to save their farm back east, then died before he could pay a cent. The contract transferred to Clara the day they buried him, her signature or a debtor's prison. She'd been 17, naive enough to believe 4 years of labor would clear it. That was before she learned how compound interest worked, before she understood that Ashford could add charges for room and board, for damaged goods, for impertinence. The number never shrank. It only grew. Now she was 20, and the contract said she had 11 years left. 11 years. She tried not to think about it. The day everything changed started like any other. Clara woke in the dark, dressed in the same worn dress she'd mended 100 times, and stepped into the store's back room where crates of new inventory sat waiting. Ashford wanted them unpacked and shelved before opening. He always wanted something before opening. Her hands moved automatically, breaking down crates, stacking canned goods, organizing tools. Muscle memory. Her mind went elsewhere. It usually did. She thought about the mountains, about what lay beyond them. Towns with real names, cities maybe. Places where a woman could walk down a street without a contract hanging around her neck like a noose. "Clara!" Ashford's voice cut through her thoughts like a blade. She flinched, nearly dropping a can of beans. "Yes, sir?" He emerged from the front room, a thick man with thinning hair and a permanent scowl. Sweat already stained his shirt despite the early hour. "Those crates should have been done an hour ago. You getting lazy on me?" She'd been working for 2 hours. She knew better than to say so. "No, sir. I'll work faster." "Damn right you will." He moved closer, and she smelled the whiskey on his breath. Morning whiskey. That meant he'd had a bad night at cards. That meant today would be worse than usual. And when you're done with that, the shelves in front need dusting, the floor needs scrubbing, and Mrs. Henderson's order needs delivered. Think you can handle that without making me look like a fool?" "Yes, sir." He stared at her, looking for an excuse. Any excuse. When he found none, he grunted and turned away. "Better. I've got business at the land office. Don't burn the place down while I'm gone." He left. Clara exhaled. She finished the crates in silence, then moved to the front room where the morning sun cut through dirty windows. The store was a cramped space packed with everything from flour to firearms, from bolts of cloth to bottles of laudanum. Ashford stocked whatever people needed and charged whatever he wanted. Prices changed based on his mood. Clara found the duster and started on the shelves. The work was mindless, which she preferred. Mindless meant safe. Mindless meant invisible. The door opened. She didn't look up. Customers didn't like being acknowledged by someone like her. They liked pretending she wasn't there. "Help you?" She kept her eyes on the shelf. "Just looking." Male voice, unfamiliar. That was rare. Ashford's Landing didn't get many strangers. She risked a glance. He stood near the door, a tall man in trail-worn clothes and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. Dusty boots, dusty coat, a rider, clearly. Something about the way he carried himself made her think of coiled rope. Loose until it wasn't. He moved through the store with unhurried purpose, examining goods without touching them. She went back to dusting, trying to ignore the prickle of awareness at the base of her skull. "This Ashford's place?" She nodded. "Yes, sir. He's out at the moment. Can I help you find something?" "Maybe." He stopped near the counter, finally close enough for her to see his face. 30, maybe. Weathered skin, dark eyes, jaw that looked like it'd been set in stone. Not handsome, exactly, too hard for that, but striking in a way that made you pay attention. Heard he takes contracts. Her stomach dropped. He does. He buying or selling? Both, sir. The stranger nodded slowly, eyes moving past her to the shelves behind the counter where Ashford kept his ledger. The ledger that listed every contract he owned, every debt he held over people's heads. You work here? He asked. Yes, sir. How long? She shouldn't answer. Ashford wouldn't like it. But something about the way the stranger asked, direct, no judgment, made her tongue loose. 3 years? That by choice? Her laugh escaped before she could stop it. Just a short, bitter sound. Not even loud. But it was genuine. And in this town, under Ashford's roof, that was a mistake. The stranger's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or pity. She wasn't sure which was worse. Before she could say anything else, the door banged open and Ashford stormed in, red-faced and already angry about something. His eyes went to Clara, then to the stranger, then back to Clara. What the hell are you doing? He demanded. Those shelves aren't going to dust themselves. Get back to work. Yes, sir. She dropped her head and moved away, duster in hand. Can I help you? Ashford's voice changed completely when he addressed the stranger, eager, almost friendly. Money talked in Ashford's Landing, and strangers meant new money. Maybe, the stranger said. Name's Caleb Rourke. Got a ranch about 30 miles west of here, looking to hire some help. That right? Ashford's interest sharpened. What kind of help? General labor, cooking, cleaning, livestock work, willing to pay fair wages. Fair wages? Ashford chuckled. You come to the right place. Though I gotta warn you, good help's hard to find these days. Most folks around here are already spoken for. What about contract workers? The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara's hand stilled on the shelf. Contract workers? Ashford's grin widened. Well now, that's different. I might have a few contracts available for purchase, depending on what you're looking for. Someone reliable, hard worker, don't need trouble. Ashford scratched his chin, eyes sliding toward Clara. Her pulse quickened. Might have something. Come on back to the office. We can discuss terms. They disappeared into the back room. Clara stood frozen, duster forgotten in her hand. This couldn't be happening. Ashford wouldn't sell her contract. She was too useful, too profitable. He'd said so himself dozens of times. But he'd also lost money at cards last night. He always needed money. She forced herself to keep working, to keep moving, even though her hand shook. Minutes crawled past. Voices murmured behind the closed office door, too low to make out words, but she caught the rhythm of negotiation, back and forth, numbers, terms. When the door opened again, Ashford's expression told her everything she needed to know. Clara. He didn't yell. That was somehow worse. Come here. She set down the duster and walked toward him on legs that felt like water. The stranger, Rourke, stood beside Ashford, face unreadable. You're being transferred, Ashford said simply. Sold your contract to Mr. Rourke here. He owns you now. Go pack your things. The words didn't make sense. Then they did, all at once, crashing over her like a wave. Sir, She stopped. What could she say? Please don't sell me to a stranger. Please keep me here in this hell I know instead of sending me to one I don't. Yes, sir. That's a good girl. Ashford's smile was thin. See, Rourke? Obedient. You made a good purchase. Something cold flashed across Rourke's face, but he said nothing. Clara walked to the storage room in a daze. Her possessions fit in a single canvas bag, 2 dresses, a shawl, a hairbrush, a book of poetry her mother had given her, everything she owned in the world. She stood there holding the bag, staring at the marks on the wooden beam. 3 years, 2 months, 16 days. Gone. Just like that. She'd hated this place, hated Ashford, hated the work, hated every suffocating minute. But it had been familiar. Now she was being sold to a stranger who'd take her 30 miles into the wilderness, and nobody would hear her scream if... No. She wouldn't think like that. Couldn't. When she returned to the front room, Rourke was waiting. Ashford had already disappeared, probably counting his money. You ready? Rourke asked. Yes, sir. He studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the door. Horses outside. She followed him into the morning sunlight. A black mare stood tied to the hitching post, saddled and packed for travel. Rourke untied the reins and swung into the saddle with easy grace. Clara stood there, uncertain. She'd never ridden a horse in her life. Ashford had never allowed it. Rourke seemed to realize this. He held out a hand. Come on, you'll ride behind me. She hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was warm and calloused, and he pulled her up behind the saddle like she weighed nothing. She grabbed the back of his coat for balance, heart hammering. Hold tight, he said. It's a long ride. They started down the main street at a walk. Clara risked one look back at the store, at the town that had been her prison. A few people watched from windows and doorways, the blacksmith, Mrs. Henderson, old man Cooper. Watching another transaction, another body changing hands. None of them met her eyes. Then a figure stepped into the street behind them. Thomas Ashford, arms crossed, that thin smile still on his face. He raised one hand in a mocking wave. Clara turned away and pressed her forehead against Rourke's back, fighting the urge to cry. She wouldn't give Ashford that. Wouldn't give anyone that. Rourke didn't speak as they left town. The mare's hooves beat a steady rhythm against the hard ground, leaving Ashford's landing behind with every step. Clara focused on breathing, on not falling off the horse, on not thinking about what came next. The mountains rose ahead of them, purple in the distance. The landscape opened up, rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and wind-twisted trees. The sun climbed higher, hot on her back. Still, Rourke said nothing. After an hour, maybe two, he finally broke the silence. You scared of me? The question caught her off guard. She almost lied, then decided there wasn't much point. Yes, sir. That's smart. Don't know me from Adam. He paused. But I'm not Ashford. Don't run things the way he does. She didn't know what to say to that. You eat breakfast? He asked. No, sir. There's jerky in the saddlebag. Help yourself. Clara blinked. When was the last time someone had offered her food without demanding something in return? She couldn't remember. Cautiously, she reached into the saddlebag and found the jerky, thick strips of dried venison. Her stomach growled. She took one piece and bit into it, the salt and smoke exploding on her tongue. Take more if you want, Rourke said. Long ride still ahead. She took another piece. They rode in silence after that, but it felt different, less threatening. The sun tracked across the sky. The landscape changed as they climbed into the foothills. More trees, actual grass, the sound of running water somewhere close. The air tasted cleaner. Late afternoon brought them to a creek. Rourke stopped and dismounted, then helped Clara down. Her legs nearly buckled. We'll rest the horse, he said. Drink if you need to. She knelt by the creek and cupped water to her mouth. It was cold and sweet, nothing like the lukewarm well water at Ashford's. She drank until her stomach hurt. When she looked up, Rourke was watching her. Not leering, just watching, reading her maybe. You got questions, he said. Ask them. Clara hesitated. Asking questions was dangerous, but he'd offered. Where exactly is your ranch? About 2 hours further west. Good land. Got cattle, some horses. Been building it for 5 years now. Alone? Mostly. Had some help at the start, but most folks don't last out here. Too isolated. He crouched beside the creek, refilling his canteen. That's why I went looking for contract workers. Figured they'd stick around longer. Because they didn't have a choice. Clara didn't say it, but Rourke's expression suggested he heard it anyway. What happened to your last worker? She asked quietly. Didn't have one. Like I said, been running it alone. He stood, securing the canteen. It's hard work, Clara. I won't lie about that. Ranch doesn't run itself. But you'll have your own room, 3 meals a day, and I don't believe in beating people. That clear enough? She searched his face for deception and found none. That didn't mean much. Her father had been honest too, and look where that landed her. But what choice did she have? Yes, sir. Stop calling me sir. Name's Caleb. Yes. She caught herself. Yes. Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Close enough? Come on, let's get moving. They reached the ranch as the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky red and gold. Clara had expected something rough, maybe a shack and a barn. Instead, she found a solid log house with real windows, a sturdy barn and corral, fenced pastures where cattle grazed. It wasn't fancy, but it was real, permanent. Caleb helped her down from the horse and led the mare to the barn. Clara stood in the yard, uncertain, while he unsaddled and brushed down the horse with practiced efficiency. When he finished, he gestured toward the house. "Come on, I'll show you where you'll stay." The inside of the house surprised her even more. Clean, organized. A main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with actual cookware, 2 doors leading to what she assumed were bedrooms, furniture that looked hand-built but sturdy, books on a shelf. Caleb opened one of the doors. "This'll be yours." Clara stepped into the room and stopped. A real bed with a mattress and blankets, a chest of drawers, a window with curtains, her own space. Not a storage room, not a corner, a room. "I know it's not much," Caleb said behind her, "but it's private. Door locks from the inside." She turned to stare at him. "What?" He pointed at the lock. "From the inside. Your space, your choice who comes in." He stepped back into the main room. "I'm serious about that, Clara. This isn't Ashford's store. You work for me, but you're not a prisoner. Clear?" Something in her chest cracked open. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the possibility of it. "Clear," she whispered. "Good." He moved to the kitchen. "You hungry? I was about to cook dinner." "I can do that." The words came automatically. "You must be tired from the ride." "So are you." He pulled out a cast iron skillet. "How about we both do it? Faster that way." They cooked together in awkward silence, Caleb frying salt pork while Clara cut potatoes and onions. The domesticity of it felt surreal. When was the last time she'd cooked alongside someone instead of for someone? They ate at the table, another first. Ashford had never allowed her to sit at his table, had barely let her eat his scraps. "It's good," Caleb said around a mouthful of potato. "You're a decent cook." "Thank you." He set down his fork, expression turning serious. "I meant what I said earlier. This is hard work and I expect you to pull your weight. But I'm not a cruel man, Clara. I don't hit. I don't cheat. You do your job, we'll get along fine. You need something, you tell me. That's the deal." "What about my contract?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "What about it?" "How long until you've worked off what I paid Ashford?" He shrugged. 11 years according to the paperwork. But we'll see. Work hard. Prove yourself reliable. Maybe we can renegotiate. 11 years. The number sat in her stomach like a stone. But at least here, maybe, those years wouldn't feel like dying. "Okay," she said quietly. They finished dinner in silence. Afterward, Caleb showed her where everything was: the well, the chicken coop, the cellar, the tool shed. He explained the routine: morning chores, afternoon work, evening meals. It sounded exhausting. It also sounded fair. As darkness fell, Caleb lit lanterns in the main room. "You should get some rest," he said. "We start early tomorrow." "What time?" "Dawn." "Of course." Clara nodded and retreated to her room. She closed the door and, after a moment's hesitation, turned the lock. The click echoed in the small space. She sat on the bed, the real bed, and looked around. Her bag sat on the floor where she'd dropped it. Everything she owned, everything she was. For the first time in 3 years, she was somewhere new. Away from Ashford, away from that town, away from people who looked through her. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt terrified. Because this was worse, in a way. Ashford had been predictable. Cruel, yes, but consistent. She knew what he wanted, what he'd do, how to stay small and survive. But Caleb? She didn't know him. Didn't know what he really wanted, what would happen when the polite facade dropped. Men always wanted something. She lay down on the bed, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the wind moved through the trees. Cattle lowed in the distance. An owl called. Sleep took a long time to come. When it did, she dreamed of marks on wooden beams, of numbers that never stopped growing, of locked doors that opened from the wrong side. She woke to the sound of someone moving in the main room. For a moment, panic seized her. Where was she? Then memory returned. The ranch, Caleb, the contract. Dawn light filtered through the curtains. She sat up, muscles stiff from the long ride, and quickly dressed. When she emerged, Caleb was already at the stove, coffee brewing. "Morning," he said without turning around. "Sleep okay?" "Yes." A lie, but an easy one. "Coffee's almost ready, then we'll start on the animals." The work began immediately after, feeding chickens, collecting eggs, milking the cow, mucking stalls. Clara threw herself into it, grateful for something to do with her hands. Caleb worked beside her, not directing so much as demonstrating. He moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done these tasks 1,000 times. By mid-morning, they'd finished the barn work and moved to fence repairs in the far pasture. Caleb showed her how to tighten wire, how to hammer posts, how to check for weak points. Her hands blistered. She didn't complain. Lunch was bread and cheese eaten in the shade of a cottonwood tree. Caleb barely spoke, seemed comfortable with silence. Clara wasn't sure if that was good or bad. The afternoon brought more work, hauling water, weeding the vegetable garden, checking the cattle for injuries or illness. The sun beat down mercilessly. Sweat soaked through Clara's dress. Muscles she didn't know she had began to scream. But nobody hit her. Nobody screamed at her. Nobody told her she was worthless. That night, they ate stew she'd made from salt beef and vegetables from the garden. Caleb complimented the seasoning. Clara almost smiled. The days blurred together after that. Wake at dawn, work until dusk, eat, sleep, repeat. The routine was punishing, but clean. No games, no tricks, no wondering when the next blow would fall. Caleb proved exactly what he'd claimed: fair, honest, consistent. He worked as hard as she did, never asked her to do anything he wouldn't do himself. Slowly, carefully, Clara began to breathe. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The blisters on her hands hardened to calluses. Her muscles adapted. The work became familiar, almost meditative. And then one morning, as they worked together to repair a section of barn roof, Caleb spoke. "You're doing good work, Clara." She nearly dropped the hammer. Compliments from Ashford had always been traps. "Thank you. I mean it. You've got a good work ethic, reliable." He hammered in another nail. "I appreciate that. It's what you paid for." "No." He stopped and looked at her directly. "I paid for 11 years of labor. What you're giving me is more than that. There's a difference." Clara didn't know how to respond. She focused on the shingle in front of her. "I know you don't trust me yet," Caleb continued. "That's fine. Trust has to be earned. But I want you to know this can be more than just a contract. You prove yourself, stick around, we can build something real here. A partnership, maybe." The words hung in the air between them. Clara's throat tightened. Partnership. As if someone like her could be a partner to anyone. "I'll keep working hard," she said quietly. Caleb nodded. "That's all I ask." They finished the roof in silence. But something had shifted. Not trust, not yet, but possibility. That night, Clara lay in her bed and thought about partnerships, about what that might mean, about whether someone like Caleb Rourke actually meant what he said, or if this was just another way of binding her tighter. She wanted to believe. That was the dangerous part. Outside her window, the frontier spread endlessly under starlight, wild and brutal and beautiful. Somewhere beyond the mountains, Ashford's Landing kept grinding people to dust. But here, in this small room with a lock that worked from the inside, Clara allowed herself to imagine something different. Maybe 11 years wouldn't be a sentence. Maybe they'd be something else. She didn't know yet. But for the first time in a very long time, she wanted to find out. The ember in her chest, the one that had refused to die even under Ashford's boot, flickered a little brighter. Not much, but enough. The first month passed like a fever breaking. Clara learned the rhythms of the ranch, the way mornings smelled of coffee and hay, the particular creak of the barn door that meant the hinges needed oil, the sound of Caleb's boots on the porch before dawn. She learned which fence posts rotted fastest, which hens were broody, how to read the sky for weather. Small things, survival things. But trust? That came slower. Caleb never pushed. He worked, ate, slept, and expected the same from her. Some days they spoke maybe a dozen words between them. Other days he'd explain something about the land or the cattle, his voice steady and factual, like he was teaching her to read a book written in dirt and grass. She listened, stored it away, waited for the trap that never sprang. "You're thinking too loud again," Caleb said one afternoon as they mended fence wire in the south pasture. Clara's hands stilled. "What?" "That look you get, like you're waiting for something bad." He twisted wire around a post, testing its tension. "Been here 5 weeks now. I haven't hit you yet. Don't plan to start." "I know." "Do you?" She met his eyes briefly, then looked away. "I'm trying to." He grunted, which might have been acceptance or understanding or just acknowledgement. With Caleb, it was hard to tell. He went back to the fence. Clara did the same. That evening, as she cooked dinner, venison stew with wild onions, she caught herself humming. The realization stopped her cold. When had she last hummed? Years. Maybe not since before her father died. The sound had just slipped out, unguarded. Caleb looked up from the table where he was cleaning his rifle. "What song is that?" "I don't know." "Something my mother used to sing." Clara stirred the pot, embarrassed. "Sorry." "For what?" "I didn't mean to Clara." He set down the cleaning rod. "You can make noise in this house. You can hum, sing, talk, laugh. You don't have to apologize for existing." The words hit something deep in her chest. She turned back to the stove, blinking hard. "The stew's ready." They ate in the usual silence, but it felt different, less empty. Clara found herself glancing at Caleb when she thought he wasn't looking, studying the way his shoulders hunched slightly when he was tired, the scar on his left hand he never explained, the careful way he always served her first before filling his own plate. "You got family?" she asked suddenly. Caleb looked up, surprised. "Had a brother. Died in the war." "I'm sorry." "Long time ago." He chewed slowly. "Parents are gone too. Ranch is all I got now." "No wife?" "Had one. Briefly." His expression closed. "Didn't work out. She left, went back east. Can't blame her. This life isn't for everyone." Clara absorbed this. It explained some things: the house built for two, the second bedroom, the careful way Caleb never touched her unless necessary. He'd been hurt before, left before. "What about you?" Caleb asked. "Besides Ashford, I mean. You got people somewhere?" "No. Father died. Mother died when I was 12. No siblings." Clara pushed food around her plate. "Just me." "That why you took the contract? No one else to help with the debt?" "Didn't have much choice. Sign or go to prison." She laughed bitterly. "At least prison has a set term." Caleb frowned. "Ashford really had you convinced you'd never work it off, didn't he? He showed me the numbers every month, the interest, the penalties, the charges for room and board. It never got smaller." "Because he was cheating you." Caleb's voice hardened. "Man's a snake. Everyone knows it, but he's got the land office in his pocket, so no one says anything. You paid him $1,800 for my contract. I paid him $1,200. He wanted $18. We negotiated." Clara stared. "He told me I owed $1,800. "I'm sure he did. Probably would have told you it was $3,000 if he thought he could get away with it." Caleb finished his stew and stood, carrying his bowl to the wash basin. "Like I said, snake." That night, Clara lay awake doing math in her head. $1,200 instead of $18. $600 Ashford had invented out of thin air. $600 of false debt she'd believed without question, because why would she question it? She'd had no power, no leverage, no way to verify anything he told her. The rage that welled up was clean and cold. She'd wasted 3 years believing a lie. But the rage brought something else with it, a question she'd been avoiding. If Caleb had paid $1,200 for an 11-year contract, and if he truly meant what he said about renegotiating terms for good work, then maybe those 11 years weren't set in stone. Maybe there was a way out that didn't involve dying first. She thought about asking him directly, then decided against it. Too soon, too risky. Better to keep her head down and work, prove herself indispensable, then negotiate. The frontier had taught her one thing: everything was negotiable if you had something the other person needed. The seasons shifted. Summer heat gave way to autumn cool. The work changed with it: harvesting the garden, salting meat for winter, reinforcing the barn against coming snow. Clara threw herself into all of it, learning fast, asking questions when she didn't understand. Caleb answered patiently, sometimes even with something close to approval. "You're good with the horses," he said one morning as Clara finished brushing down the mare. "They trust you. Animals are easier than people. Ain't that the truth?" He leaned against the stall door. "I'm heading into town tomorrow. Need to pick up supplies before winter sets in proper. You want to come?" Clara's stomach clenched. Town meant Ashford's Landing, meant Ashford. "Do I have to?" "No. Just thought you might want to see civilization, such as it is." He shrugged. "But you can stay here if you prefer. Probably easier without the extra weight on the horse anyway." "I'll stay." "Fair enough. I'll be gone most of the day. You'll be all right alone?" The question should have been insulting. Instead, it felt like consideration. "I'll manage." The next morning, Clara woke to find Caleb already saddling the mare in pre-dawn darkness. She made coffee and packed him food for the ride. Bread, dried meat, an apple from the root cellar. "Should be back before dark," Caleb said, accepting the bundle. "You need anything? Rifles loaded above the mantel. Don't hesitate to use it if something comes around." "What would come around?" "Coyotes mostly, maybe a mountain lion if you're unlucky, but they usually stay clear of the house." He swung into the saddle. "Just keep the doors locked and you'll be fine." He rode off into the gray dawn, and Clara stood in the yard watching until he disappeared over the ridge. Then she turned back to the house, suddenly aware of how quiet everything was. No Caleb moving around, no familiar sounds of him working, just her and the land and the wind in the trees. She spent the morning on normal chores, feeding animals, collecting eggs, hauling water. But without Caleb's presence, the ranch felt different, bigger, more exposed. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked wrong. By afternoon, she'd worked herself into a state of nerves over nothing. This was ridiculous. She was a grown woman, not a child afraid of the dark. She'd survived 3 years under Ashford's roof. She could handle one day alone. She forced herself to sit on the porch and mend clothes, trying to relax. The sun felt good. The air smelled clean. Gradually, her shoulders unknotted. That's when she saw the rider. At first, she thought it was Caleb coming back early. Then the figure got closer and she realized the horse was wrong. The build was wrong. Everything was wrong. Her heart kicked into a gallop. She stood, fingers tightening on the shirt she'd been mending, and watched the rider approach. He came straight for the house, not slowing, not veering, deliberate. When he was close enough for her to see his face, her blood went cold. Thomas Ashford. He reined in at the edge of the yard, that familiar thin smile already in place. Older now in the afternoon light, sweat-stained and road-dusty, but still the same. Still dangerous. "Clara." His voice dripped false warmth. "Look at you. Almost didn't recognize you without the store apron." She said nothing. Couldn't. Her throat had locked. "Where's Rourke?" Ashford looked toward the barn, the house. "Don't see his horse." "He's not here." "That right?" The smile widened. "Shame. I was hoping to have a word with him about the terms of your contract." "What about them?" Ashford dismounted, moving with the casual confidence of a man who knew she couldn't stop him. "See, I've been thinking, the price we settled on, it might have been too low. I didn't account for certain factors. Your skill level, your work ethic. Rourke got a bargain, really." "You already made the deal." "Deals can be renegotiated." He took a step closer. Clara took a step back. "I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to take you back, let Rourke out of the contract. He gets his money back. I get my property. Everyone's happy. I'm not your property anymore." "Aren't you?" Ashford's smile turned sharp. "Contract says otherwise. Contract says you belong to whoever holds the paper. Right now that's Rourke. But if he were to sell you back to me, he won't. You sure about that? Man you barely know, way out here in the middle of nowhere, winter coming on, might decide you're more trouble than you're worth. Might be happy to unload you." Ashford was close now, too close. "Or maybe I don't wait for him to decide. Maybe I just take what's mine." Clara's hand moved before she thought about it, reaching for the knife at her belt, the one Caleb had given her for kitchen work. Her fingers closed around the handle. Ashford saw and laughed. "You gonna stab me, girl? That'd be assault. They'd hang you for that. Or worse, get off this property. Or what? He reached for her. Clara pulled the knife and held it between them, hand shaking but blade steady. Or I'll make you. For a moment, genuine surprise crossed Ashford's face. Then it hardened into something ugly. You've gotten bold. That's Rourke's influence, I suppose. Teaching you to forget your place. My place isn't with you. Not anymore. Your place is where I say it is. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Clara tried to pull away, but his grip was iron, twisting until pain lanced up her arm and the knife fell. You think running off to play house with some rancher changes anything? Your debt, your property, that's all you'll ever be. Clara drove her knee up as hard as she could. Ashford doubled over with a grunt, grip loosening just enough for her to wrench free. She ran for the house, hearing him curse behind her. She hit the door at full speed, slamming it shut and throwing the bolt. Her hands fumbled with the lock as footsteps pounded up the porch steps. The door shuddered under a heavy impact. Ashford's voice came through the wood, tight with pain and rage. You little bitch! Open this door right now! Clara ran to the mantel and grabbed the rifle Caleb had mentioned. Her fingers shook as she checked the chamber, loaded, like he'd said. She'd never fired a gun in her life. Didn't matter. She'd figure it out. Another impact rattled the door. I'm trying to be reasonable, Clara. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. She moved to the window, rifle raised, and looked out. Ashford stood on the porch, red-faced and furious. When he saw her with the gun, he actually laughed. You don't have the spine for that. Clara opened the window 6 inches, just enough to shove the rifle barrel through. Try the door again and we'll find out. They stared at each other across the yard. Ashford's expression cycled through anger, calculation, disbelief. Finally, he stepped back. All right. I can see you need time to think this through. He raised his hands in mock surrender. I'll go. But this isn't over, Clara. Rourke can't protect you forever. Sooner or later, you'll be alone again, and when that happens... He let the threat hang unfinished. He mounted his horse and rode off at a leisurely pace, like a man without a care. Clara watched until he disappeared, then kept watching. Only when she was certain he was truly gone did she lower the rifle. Her legs gave out. She sank to the floor back against the wall, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. The rifle lay across her lap. Outside, the sun continued its arc across the sky, indifferent. She sat there for an hour, maybe 2. The shadows lengthened, her breathing gradually slowed. The shaking stopped. When she finally stood, her body felt like it belonged to someone else. She put the rifle back above the mantel with numb hands. Then she walked to the kitchen and started preparing dinner, because that's what you did. You kept moving. You survived. Caleb returned just as the sun touched the horizon. Clara heard the horse before she saw him, and relief flooded through her so intensely it hurt. He came through the door carrying supplies, already talking. Sorry I'm late. Took longer than I... He stopped, eyes finding her face. What happened? Nothing. Clara. I said nothing. He set down the supplies slowly, gaze never leaving her. You're white as a sheet, and you're trembling. Something happened. Tell me. The command in his voice broke something loose. Ashford was here. Caleb went very still. When? This afternoon. He said he wanted to renegotiate my contract, said he wanted to buy me back. The words tumbled out now, unstoppable. I told him to leave. He grabbed me. I pulled a knife on him. Then he tried to break down the door, and I got the rifle, and where is he now? Gone. I pointed the rifle at him, and he left. Caleb's jaw worked. His hands curled into fists, then slowly uncurled. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. He touched you? My wrist. But I got away. Did he hurt you anywhere else? No, I need him. Then I ran. Something that might have been approval flickered across Caleb's face. Good. That was smart. He moved to the window and looked out at the darkening landscape. He say anything else? Make any threats? Clara told him everything, the contract renegotiation excuse, the implications, the promises that this wasn't over. Caleb listened without interrupting, his expression growing harder with each word. When she finished, he turned from the window. All right, here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, I'm riding to the county seat. There's a territorial marshal there, man named Carson. I'm going to file a formal complaint against Ashford for trespassing and attempted assault. Will that do anything? It'll put it on record, create a paper trail, and it'll make it clear to Ashford that you're not alone out here. Caleb's voice softened slightly. I'm sorry this happened. I shouldn't have left you alone. You didn't know. Should have guessed. Man like Ashford doesn't let go easy. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I'll stay close for a while. No more trips to town without you along. I don't want to go back there. Then we'll find somewhere else for supplies. There's a settlement about 40 miles north, smaller, but they've got a trading post. He studied her. You eat yet? The question was so normal it almost made her laugh. I was waiting for you. I'll help. They cooked together in silence, but Clara felt the tension radiating off him. Caleb was angry, not at her, but for her. The distinction mattered. When they sat down to eat, he spoke again. I want you to learn how to shoot that rifle properly, not just point it, actually use it. All right. And I'm going to teach you to ride. If something happens and you need to run, you should be able to get to help. Clara nodded, throat tight. He was preparing her for a fight. The realization was terrifying and oddly comforting at the same time. One more thing, Caleb said. That contract Ashford sold me. It's legal, far as the law is concerned. But morally? He shook his head. Whole system's rotten. You didn't choose this life. You were forced into it by debt you didn't create. That's not right. But it's legal. Legal and right aren't always the same thing. He met her eyes directly. I meant what I said before, about renegotiating. You've been here almost 2 months now. You work hard, you're reliable. You haven't given me a single reason to regret buying that contract. So I'm proposing new terms. Clara's heart stuttered. What kind of terms? You keep working like you have been. In exchange, I'll pay off $50 from your contract debt every month. At that rate, you'll be clear in 2 years, not 11. The numbers didn't make sense at first, then they did, and Clara couldn't breathe. You'd lose money. I'd lose the paper value, but I'd gain a partner who chose to be here. That's worth more to me. He leaned back. Think about it. You don't have to answer now. Yes. Caleb blinked. Yes? Yes. I accept. 2 years, 50 a month. Clara felt dizzy. But why? You paid $1,200 for 11 years of labor. This way you only get 2. Because I don't want labor. I want someone who actually gives a damn about this place. And you can't give a damn if you're counting down days till you're free. He shrugged. Besides, if you decide to stay after you're clear, you'll do it because you want to, not because a piece of paper says you have to. The idea of choosing where she lived, who she worked with, what she did with her time, it felt impossible. Foreign, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. What if I leave as soon as the debt's paid? She asked. Then you leave. I won't stop you, but I'm betting you won't. Why? Because you're starting to put down roots. I can see it. His expression softened. You hummed while cooking last week. You smiled at the horses yesterday. You're not just surviving anymore. You're living. People don't usually walk away from that. Clara looked down at her hands, calloused now, strong from work. Hands that had held a knife against Ashford, hands that had pointed a rifle and meant it. When had she become someone who could do those things? I'll stay, she said quietly. After the 2 years. If you still want me here. I'll want you here. They finished dinner in comfortable silence. Clara washed the dishes while Caleb checked the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. When she retreated to her room, he called after her. Clara? She turned. Yeah? You did good today, standing up to him. Most people wouldn't have. The praise settled warm in her chest. I was terrified. Brave isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. He nodded toward her room. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She closed the door and leaned against it, processing everything. 2 years, not 11. And the possibility of choosing to stay, of being wanted instead of owned. The ember in her chest flared brighter. The next morning, Caleb rode out at first light, heading for the county seat and Marshal Carson. Clara watched him go with a mixture of anxiety and determination. She had work to do. Giving in to fear would only prove Ashford right. She threw herself into the daily routine: animals, garden, repairs, keeping busy, staying visible from the house in case anyone approached. The rifle stayed within reach. Nobody came. Caleb returned late that afternoon, looking grim but satisfied. "Marshall's opening an investigation. Ashford's going to get a visit. Won't be pleasant." "Will it stop him from coming here?" "Maybe. Man's a coward at heart. Likes easy targets. You proved you're not easy." Caleb dismounted and started unsaddling the mare. "But we're not taking chances. Starting tomorrow, shooting lessons." He kept his word. The next morning, after chores, Caleb set up targets in the south pasture, old bottles and cans balanced on fence posts. He showed Clara how to hold the rifle, how to breathe, how to sight down the barrel. "Don't yank the trigger," he instructed. "Squeeze it, smooth and steady." Her first shot went wide, the recoil slamming into her shoulder hard enough to bruise. Her second shot shattered a bottle. By the 10th shot, she was hitting more than she missed. "Natural talent," Caleb said, actually smiling. "Or maybe just stubborn." "Can it be both?" He laughed, the first real laugh she'd heard from him. The sound did something strange to her stomach. Over the following weeks, they fell into a new pattern: morning chores, shooting practice, afternoon work, evening meals. Caleb taught her to ride the gentler of his two horses, a gelding named Sam. She was terrible at first, falling off twice, but gradually found her balance. "You're thinking too much," Caleb said, watching her circle the corral. "Trust the horse. He knows what he's doing." "That's the problem. I don't trust easily." "I've noticed." But slowly, inch by painful inch, she was learning. Trust the horse, trust the rifle. Trust that Caleb meant what he said. Trust that the ground beneath her feet was solid. Winter arrived hard and fast, snow blanketing the ranch overnight. The work changed again, breaking ice on water troughs, feeding hay to the cattle, keeping paths clear. The cold was brutal, but the house stayed warm. Caleb had built it well. They spent long evenings by the fire, Clara mending clothes or reading while Caleb worked on tack or carved wood. Sometimes they talked. Other times, silence was enough. One night, as snow hammered against the windows, Clara looked up from her book. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you really buy my contract?" "The truth." Caleb set down the bridle he'd been oiling. "I told you, needed help with the ranch." "You could have hired someone, paid wages. This is a lot more complicated." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "You want the honest answer?" "Always." "I saw what Ashford was doing to you, the way he talked about you like you weren't even human. And I thought," he paused. "My wife, before she left. She said I was too hard, too cold. Said I didn't know how to care about anything except this damn ranch. Maybe she was right, but when I saw you in that store, something in me just objected, couldn't walk away from it." Clara absorbed this. "So you bought me to prove you're not cold?" "Maybe. Or maybe I bought you because nobody else would, and somebody should have." He met her eyes. "Does the reason matter?" "I don't know yet." He nodded, accepting this. They went back to their respective tasks, but something had shifted again. Another layer peeled back. The winter months passed in a blur of white. Isolated by snow, cut off from the rest of the world, the ranch became its own universe. Just Clara and Caleb and the animals and the work. It should have felt claustrophobic. Instead, it felt safe. But safety, Clara was learning, was fragile. The first real thaw came in early March. Caleb rode out to check the fence lines, leaving Clara at the house, with strict instructions to stay inside and keep the rifle close. She'd rolled her eyes but agreed. He'd been gone maybe 2 hours when she heard the sound. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses. Clara's blood went cold. She grabbed the rifle and moved to the window, peering out through the gap in the curtains. 3 riders approached the house. The man in front was Ashford. Clara's hands tightened on the rifle as the 3 riders drew closer. Ashford looked different than the last time she'd seen him. Thinner, meaner, like winter had scraped something essential away and left only the nastiest parts. The 2 men flanking him were strangers, both thick-shouldered and hard-faced. Hired muscle, she realized. He'd brought backup. They stopped in the yard, horses stamping and blowing steam in the cold air. Ashford dismounted first, that familiar smile already playing at his lips. The other two stayed mounted, hands resting casual on their gun belts. Clara didn't move from the window. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought they might crack. Ashford cupped his hands around his mouth. "Clara, I know you're in there. Come on out. Let's talk like civilized people." She said nothing. The rifle barrel trembled slightly where it rested against the window frame. "I heard about your little complaint to Marshal Carson," Ashford continued, voice dripping false cheer. "That wasn't very neighborly. Got me thinking maybe we started off on the wrong foot, so I brought some friends along to help smooth things over." One of the hired men laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "See, the thing is," Ashford went on, "I've been going over the contract terms. Turns out there's some legal ambiguity about the transfer. My lawyer thinks I might have grounds to reclaim my property. Of course, we could settle this without lawyers. Save everyone a lot of trouble." Clara's throat had gone bone dry. She forced words out. "Caleb will be back soon." "Will he?" Ashford exchanged glances with his companions. Funny thing about fence lines, they're long. Man could be out there for hours checking every post. Anything could happen in that time. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Clara's finger found the rifle's trigger, and the cold metal steadied her somehow. She'd done this before, pointed a gun at Ashford and made him back down. She could do it again. "I've got a rifle," she called out. "Same as last time. Leave now, or I'll use it." "You didn't use it last time," Ashford said. "Just pointed it and made noise. There's a difference between holding a gun and pulling the trigger. Most people don't have the stomach for the second part." He started walking toward the house. Slow, deliberate steps, testing her. Clara shoved the rifle barrel further through the window gap. "Stop right there." He kept coming. "Or what? You'll shoot me? In front of witnesses? They'll hang you for murder, girl. That what you want?" "Self-defense isn't murder." "Depends who's telling the story." He was at the porch steps now. "My friends here will testify I came in peace. Unarmed, just trying to have a conversation. You shot me in cold blood. How do you think that'll play in court?" Clara's hands shook. He was right, and they both knew it. The system was rigged. It had always been rigged. Men like Ashford wrote the rules, and people like her got crushed under them. But she'd learned something these past months with Caleb. Sometimes you had to break the rules to survive. She squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked like lightning, kicking the rifle back into her shoulder. The bullet punched into the porch step 2 inches from Ashford's boot. Wood splintered. The man froze. "Next one goes in your leg," Clara said, already working the bolt to chamber another round. Her voice didn't shake this time. "Then your gut. Then wherever the hell I feel like. Your friends can tell whatever story they want. You'll be too dead to care." For the first time, real fear crossed Ashford's face. He raised his hands and backed up a step. All right. No need for that. I'm going." "Like hell you are." The new voice came from behind the riders. All 3 men spun around. Clara's heart leapt. Caleb sat on his black mare at the edge of the yard, rifle already raised and aimed. He must have heard the shot and come running. Mud splattered his coat and his hat hung crooked, but his hands were rock steady. "Step away from the house, Ashford," Caleb said quietly. "Do it now." Ashford's face cycled through shock, anger, and calculation. "This doesn't concern you, Rourke. This is about a contract dispute. You brought armed men to my property and threatened a woman under my protection. That concerns me plenty." Caleb's voice never rose, but something in it made the temperature drop. "You've got 10 seconds to mount up and ride out. After that, I start shooting." One of the hired men shifted in his saddle. "There's 3 of us and 1 of you." "2 of us," Clara called from the window, "and I already proved I'll pull the trigger." The men looked at each other, then at Ashford. Whatever they saw in his face must not have been worth the money he was paying, because the first one turned his horse. "This ain't worth dying over," he muttered. The second one followed. Ashford stood alone in the yard, face purple with rage. "You're making a mistake, Rourke, both of you. I've got connections. The land office, the territorial judge. I can make your life hell." "You can try." Caleb nudged his horse forward a few steps. "But here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to stay gone. And if I see you or any of your hired dogs on my property again, I won't bother with warnings. Clear? The contract is legal and binding. Clara works for me now, not you. You got your money, you signed the transfer papers. That's the end of it. Caleb's rifle didn't waver. Unless you want to take this to court, in which case I'll countersue for harassment, trespassing, and attempted assault. I've got witnesses. You've got a reputation. How do you think that'll play? Ashford's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Finally, he spat in the dirt and stalked to his horse. He mounted clumsily, hands shaking with fury. This isn't finished, he snarled. Yeah, it is. Caleb's voice was flat. You just don't know it yet. Ashford yanked his horse around and kicked it into a gallop. His hired men followed, all three of them disappearing over the ridge in a cloud of mud and melting snow. Clara watched until they were gone, then kept watching until her eyes burned. Only when Caleb called her name did she lower the rifle. She met him at the door, legs trembling so badly she had to lean against the frame. Caleb dismounted and crossed to her in 3 long strides. You all right? His hands hovered near her shoulders but didn't touch. Did they hurt you? No, Her voice cracked. I shot at him. I actually pulled the trigger. I heard. Hell of a shot, too, from what I can see of that porch step. Something that might have been pride flickered in his expression. You did good, Clara. I was terrified. I know, but you didn't freeze. That's what matters. He finally touched her then, just his hand on her shoulder, warm and steady. Come on, let's get inside. You're shaking. She let him guide her to a chair by the fireplace. He poured whiskey from a bottle she didn't know he had and pressed it into her hands. Drink. She drank. The burn cut through the fog in her head, bringing the world back into focus. Caleb built up the fire, then sat across from her, elbows on his knees. Tell me exactly what happened. Start to finish. Clara told him everything. The 3 riders, Ashford's threats about legal ambiguity, the way he'd tested her by walking toward the house. Caleb's expression grew darker with each word. He's not going to stop, Clara said when she finished. You know that, right? He'll find another way. Maybe. But he's running scared now. You saw it. When you fired that shot, he realized you're not the same girl he sold 6 months ago. Caleb leaned back. That changes the math for him. Makes this less profitable. Or makes him more desperate. Possibly. Caleb was quiet for a moment. I should have been here. You couldn't have known. Still, I'm supposed to protect you. That's part of the deal. Clara looked at him. Really looked. The tension in his shoulders, the way his hands kept curling into fists, the muscle jumping in his jaw. He was angry at himself, she realized. Felt like he'd failed somehow. You got back in time, she said quietly. That's what matters. Barely. If I'd been another 5 minutes, but you weren't. She set down the whiskey glass. Caleb, I handled it. Not perfectly, not without being scared, but I handled it. That's something, isn't it? He met her eyes, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. They were both people who'd been bent but not broken, who'd learned to survive in a world that didn't care if they lived or died. Yeah, he said finally. That's something. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the fire pop and crackle. Outside, the afternoon sun painted the snow-covered mountains gold, beautiful and indifferent. I need to ride into the county seat tomorrow, Caleb said eventually. Update Marshal Carson about what happened today. This needs to be on record. I'm coming with you. He started to argue, then stopped. All right, we'll both go. But we're armed and we're staying alert. Always. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the afternoon in her head. The sound of the gunshot. The look on Ashford's face when the bullet splintered wood near his boot. The way her hands had steadied once she'd made the decision to actually pull the trigger. She'd crossed a line today, proven she could do violence if pushed. That should have scared her. Instead, it felt like power, like reclaiming something Ashford had spent 3 years trying to take. Around midnight, she heard movement in the main room. She got up and found Caleb sitting at the table, cleaning his rifle by lamplight. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. He looked up, unsurprised to see her. Figured I'd do something useful with the insomnia. Coffee's still hot if you want some. She poured herself a cup and sat across from him, watching his hands move over the rifle with practiced efficiency. Outside, a coyote called in the distance. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said after a while. "Sure." "When you bought my contract, did you know Ashford would react like this?" Caleb's hands stilled. "I knew he was the type to hold grudges. Didn't expect him to be this persistent about it, though." "Why do you think he is? It's been months. He got his money?" "Because you got away." But Caleb went back to cleaning. Men like Ashford, they need to feel like they're in control. When someone slips that control, it eats at them, makes them do stupid things. Like bring hired guns to intimidate a woman. Exactly. He set down the cleaning rod. But here's what he doesn't understand. Every time he comes at you and you fight back, you get stronger. He's making you dangerous without realizing it. Clara tested the word in her mind. Dangerous. Was that what she was becoming? "Is that a bad thing?" she asked. "Not from where I'm sitting." They drank coffee in comfortable silence. Eventually, Caleb spoke again. "You know what I thought about on the ride back today, after I heard that gunshot?" "What?" "That if something happened to you, I'd burn Ashford's Landing to the ground." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. "The store, the land office, everything. I'd make sure there was nothing left." Clara's chest tightened. "That's not very lawful." "No, it's not." He looked at her directly. "But there's a difference between the law and what's right. I've learned that the hard way." "So have I." Something shifted in the air between them. Not romantic, not yet, but something deeper than employer and employee. Something like partnership. Like they'd both recognized the other was willing to cross lines if necessary. "Get some sleep," Caleb said, standing. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Claire went back to her room, but this time sleep came easier. She dreamed of gunshots and burning buildings, but in the dreams, she wasn't afraid. The ride to the county seat took most of the next day. They left before dawn, both armed, both scanning the horizon constantly. But the trail stayed empty. If Ashford had men watching, they didn't show themselves. The county seat was bigger than Ashford's Landing, actual brick buildings, paved streets, a courthouse with white columns, civilization, or the frontier's attempt at it. They found Marshal Carson in his office, a weathered man in his 50s with intelligent eyes and a permanent frown. Caleb explained what had happened. Carson listened, taking notes, asking occasional questions. When Caleb finished, the marshal sat back and steepled his fingers. "Thomas Ashford's been a problem for years," he said, "but he's careful, stays just inside the law. This, though," he tapped his notes, "bringing armed men, making threats, trespassing, that's actionable." "What can you do?" Clara asked. "File charges? Issue a restraining order keeping him away from Rourke's property. Maybe bring him in for questioning." Carson's expression wasn't hopeful. "Problem is, Ashford's got friends. Judge Hendricks owes him money. The land office clerk is his cousin. He's got reach." "So he'll get away with it," Clara said flatly. "Not necessarily, but it won't be quick or easy." Carson looked at Caleb. "You prepared for that fight?" "I am." "And you?" The marshal's attention shifted to Clara. "This is going to get ugly. Ashford's going to try to drag your name through the mud. Make you out to be a liar, a troublemaker. Can you handle that?" Clara thought about the storage room behind Ashford's store, the marks on the wooden beam, 3 years of being invisible, being nothing. Then she thought about the rifle in her hands, the sound of the shot, the way Ashford's face had gone white with fear. "Let him try," she said. Carson smiled slightly. "Good. You'll need that spine." He stood. "I'll start the paperwork today. In the meantime, you two watch yourselves. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't take chances. And if Ashford shows up again, you shoot first and we'll sort out the legalities after." They spent the night in a boarding house, Clara in one room and Caleb in another. It felt strange sleeping in a real bed in a building full of strangers. The sounds of the town filtered through the walls. Horses, voices, a piano playing somewhere. Different from the ranch's silence, but not better. In the morning, they started the ride home. The sky was clear, the air warming as winter finally began its retreat. They were maybe an hour from the ranch when Caleb pulled up short. "What?" Clara asked. He pointed. In the distance, a thin column of smoke rose into the sky. coming from the direction of the ranch. They kicked their horses into a gallop. Clara's heart hammered as they crested the final ridge. The ranch came into view and her stomach dropped. The barn was burning. Flames licked at the roof, black smoke pouring into the sky. The house looked untouched, but the corral gate hung open and the cattle were scattered. They rode in hard. Caleb was off his horse before it fully stopped, already running for the well. Clara followed, her mind spinning. This was Ashford, had to be. Retaliation for going to the marshal. "The horses!" Caleb shouted, pointing at the barn. "Check if they're inside." Clara ran to the barn door. Heat hit her like a wall. Through the smoke, she could see the two stalls. Both empty, thank heaven. The horses must have panicked and run when the fire started. "They're out!" she yelled. Caleb was already hauling water, throwing bucket after bucket at the flames. Clara grabbed another bucket and joined him. They worked like machines, drawing water and throwing it, drawing and throwing, until their arms screamed and their clothes were soaked and their lungs burned from smoke. It was hopeless. The barn was going to burn, but maybe they could save part of it. Maybe they could stop it from spreading to the house. An hour later, the barn was a smoking ruin. The roof had collapsed, taking most of the walls with it. What was left was just charred beams and ash. Caleb stood staring at it, face black with soot, chest heaving. Clara's legs finally gave out. She sat in the mud, lungs burning, and tried not to cry. All that work, all those months of building something, gone. "He did this," she said hoarsely. "Ashford." "Yeah." Caleb's voice was dead. "He did. We went to the marshal, we did everything right, and he still—" "I know." Clara looked up at him. Something in his expression scared her. Not anger. She'd seen him angry. This was colder, emptier, like he'd made a decision and wasn't going to unmake it. "Caleb, stay here," he said quietly. "I need to check something." He walked to what was left of the barn and started sifting through the debris. Clara watched, confused, until he held something up. A bottle. The glass was cracked from heat, but she could still smell the kerosene. Arson. Deliberate. Not even trying to hide it. Caleb walked back and set the bottle down carefully. Then he went to his horse and pulled the rifle from its scabbard. "What are you doing?" Clara asked. "Going to town." "Caleb, no. That's exactly what he wants. You go after him now, you'll be the one in jail." "Don't care." "Yes, you do." She struggled to her feet. "Listen to me. Ashford's trying to provoke you into doing something stupid, something that gives him legal cover. Don't give him that. He burned my barn, Clara. He could have killed the horses, could have spread to the house while we were inside." Caleb's control was fracturing. "This ends. Today." "Not like this." She grabbed his arm. "We go back to Carson, show him the bottle, press charges, do this the right way." "The right way takes months, maybe years. And in the meantime, what? We wait for him to burn the house next? Come after you again?" He pulled free. "No, I'm done waiting. Then I'm coming with you." That stopped him. "What?" "You heard me. You go to town, I go too. You want to throw your life away on revenge? Fine. But I'm not staying here alone while you do it." They stared at each other. Clara saw the moment the logic hit him. If he rode off and left her, Ashford could send more men. She'd be unprotected. And protecting her mattered more to Caleb than revenge, whether he wanted to admit it or not. His shoulders sagged. "Damn it, Clara." "Yeah." She managed a weak smile. "Damn me for being right." He almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he just shook his head and put the rifle away. "All right, we go to Carson. Show him the evidence. Let the law handle it." "Thank you." They spent the rest of the day salvaging what they could from the barn. Tools, tack, anything that hadn't burned completely. It wasn't much. Clara found herself crying as she sorted through the ash, not from sadness, but from sheer exhaustion and rage. All this work, all this hope, and Ashford had destroyed it like it meant nothing. That night they sat on the porch and ate cold food, too tired to cook. The smell of smoke hung in the air. The ruined barn was a black skeleton against the sunset. "I'm sorry," Caleb said quietly. "This is my fault. I brought you here, made you a target." "Stop." Clara's voice was sharp. Ashford did this, not you. Don't take that on. But no, he's trying to break us. Make us turn on each other or give up. That's what he does. Destroys things because he can't control them. She looked at the barn ruins. We're not giving him that. We're not breaking. Caleb was quiet for a long time. Then, what do you want to do? Rebuild, fight back, prove he can't win. She turned to him. That's what you'd do, right? If I wasn't here? If you weren't here, I'd probably already be in jail for murder. Then it's a good thing I am here. He smiled, just a small one, but real. Yeah, it is. They sat in silence as the sun finished setting. Tomorrow they'd ride to the county seat again. Tomorrow they'd file more charges, show more evidence, fight through more legal wrangling. But tonight, they'd survived. The house still stood. They were both alive. The horses were safe. Clara thought about the ember in her chest. It had taken hits, Ashford's fists, his threats, his arson. But it hadn't gone out. If anything, it burned hotter. She looked at Caleb, this hard man who'd bought her contract and given her a door that locked from the inside, who'd taught her to shoot and ride and believed that maybe the frontier had space for people like them. We're going to win this, she said. It wasn't a question. It was a promise. Caleb stood at first light, examining the kerosene bottle in the gray dawn. He turned it over in his hands like it might tell him something new, then wrapped it carefully in cloth and tucked it into his saddlebag. Ready? He asked. Clara nodded, already mounted on Sam. Her rifle rested across her lap. They'd both agreed. No more riding unarmed, no more assuming Ashford would play by any rules at all. The ride to the county seat felt longer this time. Every shadow looked wrong. Every distant rider made Clara's hand drift toward her weapon. But the trail stayed quiet, and by mid-morning they were tying their horses outside Marshal Carson's office. Carson looked up from his desk as they entered, took one look at their soot-stained clothes and exhausted faces, and swore quietly. What now? Caleb set the wrapped bottle on the desk. Someone burned my barn yesterday. Found this in the wreckage. The marshal unwrapped it, sniffed, and his expression went hard. Kerosene. You see who did it? We were here filing your paperwork, Clara said. Convenient timing. Ashford. Carson wasn't asking. Who else? Caleb's voice was flat. This was retaliation. We came to you, so he hit back. Carson stood and paced to the window, staring out at the street. This changes things. Arson's a felony. I can bring him in for questioning, maybe even arrest him if I can connect him to it. Can you? Clara asked. He won't have done it himself. He'll have hired it out, same as when he brought those men to the ranch. Probably. But hired arsonists talk when they're facing prison time. The marshal turned back. Let me work on this. In the meantime, you two need to be careful. Ashford's escalating. Next time might be worse. Next time he comes at us, he won't walk away, Caleb said quietly. Carson studied him. That's the anger talking. Don't let it make you stupid. You kill Ashford, even in self-defense, and his friends will make sure you hang for it. Judge Hendricks will see to that personally. So what do we do? Just wait for him to burn the house with us inside? You document everything, you stay alert, and you trust me to build a case strong enough that even Hendricks can't ignore it. Carson sat back down. I know it's not satisfying, but it's the only way this ends without you both dead or in prison. They left the marshal's office with nothing but promises. Clara felt the frustration radiating off Caleb as they mounted up. He wanted action, wanted to hit back. She understood. She wanted the same thing. We should get supplies while we're here, she said, trying to redirect his thoughts. We'll need to rebuild the barn. Might as well start pricing lumber. Caleb nodded absently. They spent the next few hours at the general store and lumberyard, tallying costs. The numbers were brutal. The barn would take most of their savings to rebuild, and that was if they did the labor themselves. We'll manage, Caleb said, more to himself than her. Did it once, can do it again. They started the ride home in early afternoon. The sky had turned gray, promising rain. Clara pulled her coat tighter and tried not to think about sleeping in a house that smelled like smoke, surrounded by the ruins of what they'd been building. They were maybe 10 miles from the ranch when Caleb suddenly pulled up. What? Clara asked. He pointed. In the distance, barely visible through the trees, was another column of smoke. Claire's stomach dropped. No, no, he wouldn't. They kicked their horses into a gallop. The ranch came into view and Clara's worst fears materialized. The house was on fire. Not fully engulfed yet, just the back corner, flames eating through the wood with terrible efficiency. But it was spreading. Caleb was off his horse and running before they'd fully stopped. Clara followed, her mind blank with panic. All their supplies were in that house. Her books, her clothes, everything they owned. And if they couldn't stop it, "Water!" Caleb shouted. "Same as before." They fell into the rhythm they'd learned yesterday. Draw, throw, draw, throw. But the house was bigger than the barn, with more places for fire to hide. Clara's arms screamed, her lungs filled with smoke. Beside her, Caleb worked like a man possessed, his face a mask of desperate focus. An hour passed. Maybe 2. The fire fought them, finding new fuel, spreading to the roof. Clara wanted to scream. This wasn't fair. This wasn't... A section of roof collapsed inward with a roar of sparks. Caleb staggered back, coughing violently. "It's not working," Clara gasped. "Caleb, we can't..." "I'm not losing the house, too." His voice was ragged. "I'm not giving him that." But even as he said it, Clara could see they were losing. The fire was too big, too hungry. They'd saved the barn's foundation yesterday through sheer will and luck. Today, luck had run out. Then she heard hoofbeats. Clara spun, rifle suddenly in her hands, ready to shoot whoever had come to finish them off. But the riders cresting the ridge weren't Ashford's men. It was a group of 6 people, ranchers from neighboring properties, people Caleb had mentioned in passing but Clara had never met. They rode in hard and dismounted, already moving, some heading for the well, others beating at flames with wet blankets. "Saw the smoke from the north ridge," one of them shouted at Caleb. "Figured you could use help." Caleb just nodded, too exhausted or too overcome to speak, and went back to fighting the fire. With the extra hands, the tide turned. Slowly, inch by stubborn inch, they beat the flames back. The house wouldn't be whole, the back rooms were gutted, the roof partially collapsed. But the main structure held. The kitchen, the main room, the stone fireplace that Caleb had built with his own hands, all still standing. By the time the last flames were out, the sun was setting and they were all black with soot. Clara sat in the mud, shaking with exhaustion, while Caleb walked the perimeter checking for hot spots. One of the neighboring ranchers, a weathered woman named Sarah McCall, sat down next to Clara and offered a canteen. "Drink. You look half dead." Clara drank. The water was warm and tasted like metal, but it cut through the ash coating her throat. "Thank you, all of you. We couldn't have..." "Don't!" Sarah's voice was kind but firm. "Out here, we look after each other. Caleb helped me mend fence last spring when my husband was sick. This is just returning the favor." Another rancher, a man named Dutch, approached Caleb. Clara heard fragments of their conversation. "Saw someone riding away as we approached. Couldn't get close enough to identify. But heading toward Ashford's Landing." Caleb's expression went dark. He looked toward Clara, then back at Dutch. They spoke in low voices for another minute before Dutch clapped him on the shoulder and walked away. As the neighbors prepared to leave, Sarah paused by Clara. "You need a place to stay tonight? My place isn't far. Got room." "We'll manage," Clara said. "But thank you." Sarah studied her. "Word of advice? Whatever fight you're in, finish it quick. Dragging these things out just gets more people hurt." She mounted her horse. "And watch your back. Whoever did this, they're not playing around anymore." The neighbors rode off into the gathering dark. Clara and Caleb stood in the yard, surveying the damage. The barn was gone. The house was a gutted shell. The savings they'd counted that morning wouldn't cover half the repairs. "He's trying to break us," Clara said quietly. "Destroy everything until we give up." "Yeah." Caleb's voice was hollow. "It's working." She turned to him, shocked. "What?" "Look around, Clara. We're ruined. Even if we rebuild, what's to stop him from doing it again? And again?" He ran a hand through his hair, leaving soot streaks. "Maybe I should just sell. Take what I can get and start over somewhere else." "And leave me where exactly?" The words came out sharper than she intended. "You forget I'm still contracted to you? I don't get to just start over." Caleb looked at her like he'd been slapped. I didn't mean, Yes, you did. You're thinking about running, leaving, letting Ashford win. Clara's exhaustion transmuted into anger. Well, I can't run. I'm stuck. So if you're done fighting, tell me now so I can figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do. That's not fair. None of this is fair. She gestured at the destroyed house, the ruined barn. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted Ashford to chase me halfway across the territory? But he is, and running won't stop him. It'll just prove he can do whatever he wants to people like us and get away with it. Well, people like us are the ones who end up dead, Clara. Maybe. Or maybe we're the ones who survive because we're too stubborn to quit. She stepped closer, forcing him to meet her eyes. You told me once that you didn't want labor. You wanted a partner. Someone who gave a damn. Well, I give a damn, Caleb. About this place, about what we're building, and I'm not walking away from it. They stood in the fading light, two people who'd been bent by the world but refused to break. Finally, Caleb's shoulders straightened. All right, he said quietly. All right, we fight. How? I don't know yet, but we figure it out. He looked at the house. Tonight, we salvage what we can. Tomorrow, we plan. They worked through the evening, pulling undamaged items from the house and piling them in the yard. Clara's room was gone, just charred beams and ash. The main room had survived, though it smelled like smoke and part of the ceiling sagged dangerously. They set up bedrolls near the fireplace, the only place that felt even marginally safe. That night, Clara lay awake listening to the wind move through the burned-out sections of the house. Every creak made her reach for the rifle beside her. Across the room, Caleb's breathing suggested he wasn't sleeping either. You still awake? She asked quietly. Yeah. What Sarah said, about finishing this quick. She's right, isn't she? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Probably. But doing it quick means doing it violent. And once we cross that line, we already crossed it. The second I pulled that trigger, the second you threatened to burn Ashford's Landing. We've been crossing lines since this started. Clara stared at the ruined ceiling. Question is, how far are we willing to go? That depends on what you're willing to live with after. It was a fair point. Clara had spent 3 years under Ashford's thumb learning to survive by being small, invisible, harmless. The idea of actively hunting him down, of becoming the aggressor, it went against everything she'd been taught about how people like her survived in this world. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe survival wasn't enough anymore. I want him to pay, she said, not just legally. I want him to feel what we're feeling, fear, loss, knowing someone more powerful is coming for you and there's nothing you can do. That's a dark road, Clara. I know, but I'm tired of being afraid, tired of waiting for the next attack. She rolled onto her side to face him. Aren't you? Caleb's expression was invisible in the darkness, but she heard the exhaustion in his voice. Every damn day. They fell silent. Outside, an owl called. The wind picked up, whistling through gaps in the walls. Clara pulled her blanket tighter and tried to sleep. She woke to the sound of horses. Her hand found the rifle before her eyes fully opened. Beside her, Caleb was already on his feet, his own rifle raised. Dawn light filtered through the burned sections of roof. Clara moved to the window and looked out. 4 riders approached. For one heart-stopping moment, she thought it was Ashford again. Then she recognized Marshal Carson in the lead. Caleb opened the door as the marshal dismounted. Carson took one look at the house and swore creatively. When did this happen? Yesterday, Caleb said, while we were in your office filing the report about the barn. Anyone see who did it? Neighbors saw someone riding away, heading toward Ashford's Landing. Caleb's voice was flat. You want to guess who it was? Carson's jaw tightened. I've got 3 deputies with me. We're going to pay Ashford a visit. Bring him in for questioning. He'll deny everything, Clara said from the doorway. Probably, but I've been asking around. Turns out Ashford hired 2 men a few days ago, Pete Dawson and Charlie Root, known troublemakers. Both left town the same day your barn burned. Carson pulled out a notebook. I'm going to find them, and I'm going to make them talk. If they implicate Ashford, we can arrest him. And if they don't? Caleb asked. Then we keep digging. But one way or another, this ends. I'm not letting someone burn people out of their homes in my territory. The marshal looked between them. You two need anything? Food? Supplies? We'll manage, Clara said, though she wasn't sure that was true. Carson nodded. Stay alert. If Ashford's this desperate, he might try something even more reckless. Don't give him an opening. The marshal and his deputies rode off. Caleb closed the door and leaned against it, eyes closed. You believe him? Clara asked. That he can actually stop Ashford? I believe he'll try. Whether he succeeds, Caleb shrugged. Law moves slow. Revenge moves fast. That's always been the problem. They spent the day sorting through the damage, trying to figure out what could be saved and what was total loss. The emotional toll was worse than the physical one. Every ruined item felt like another piece of their lives Ashford had taken. Clara was digging through the remains of her room when she found the book of poetry her mother had given her. The cover was charred, some pages turned to ash. But the middle section had survived, protected by the pages around it. She sat in the ashes and read her mother's handwriting on the inside cover. For Clara, may you always find words when you need them. The tears came before she could stop them. Not loud, just silent tracks through the soot on her face. She'd thought she was cried out. Turned out there was always more. Caleb found her there 20 minutes later. He didn't say anything, just sat beside her in the ash and waited. She gave me this the week before she died, Clara said eventually. I've carried it through everything. Ashford's store, the journey here, all of it, and now it's mostly gone. The words you remember are still yours. Fire can't take those. Clara nodded, even though it didn't really help. She carefully wrapped the salvaged pages in cloth and added them to the pile of things to keep. By evening, they'd created a rough inventory. Maybe a third of their possessions had survived. The rest was smoke and ash. They cooked a sparse dinner over the fireplace, the only part of the house that still worked properly. We need to make a decision, Caleb said as they ate, about the contract. Clara looked up confused. What about it? If this keeps going, you're going to end up dead or worse. That's not what I bought you away from Ashford for. He set down his plate. I'm willing to pay off the rest of your contract. Today. You'd be free. Could go anywhere. Start over somewhere Ashford can't reach you. The offer hung between them. Freedom, the thing she'd wanted since her father died, just handed to her. No, Clara said. Caleb blinked. What? No, I'm not leaving. She met his eyes. You said it yourself. You want a partner, not labor. Partners don't run when things get hard. They stay and fight. Clara, this isn't your fight. Yes, it is. Ashford made it my fight the day he sold me to you, the day he showed up here thinking he could intimidate me into coming back. Every threat, every fire, he made this about me too. She leaned forward. And I'm done running from men like him. Done being afraid. If we're going to end this, we end it together. Caleb studied her face, looking for doubt. When he found none, something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He held out his hand. Clara shook it, their grips firm and equal. The gesture felt significant somehow, like they'd just sealed something more binding than any contract. All right then, Caleb said. We finish this. Together. They sat up late that night, planning. If the law couldn't stop Ashford fast enough, they needed their own strategy, something that would force his hand or neutralize him completely. What does he care about most? Clara asked. Money, power, his reputation. Then we hit him there. Make it costly to keep coming after us. Make him look weak in front of the people who matter to him. Caleb nodded slowly. The land office. That's his power base. If we could expose him there, show how he manipulates contracts, cheats people, we might turn public opinion against him. Do you know other people he's cheated? A few, but they're scared to speak up. Ashford has too much influence. Clara thought about this. What if they didn't have to speak up publicly? What if we gathered evidence quietly, built a case, and then dumped it all on Marshal Carson at once? That could work, but it would take time, and Ashford's not going to stop attacking while we investigate. So we make him think he's winning. We act broken, defeated. Let him get comfortable. Clara's mind was racing now. Meanwhile, we're gathering ammunition, and when we have enough, we strike all at once. Caleb looked at her with something like admiration. That's devious. I learned from the best. Ashford spent 3 years teaching me how cruel people think. They refined the plan over the next hour, identifying people to talk to, documents to find, ways to make their defeat look convincing. It wasn't perfect. It had a dozen ways it could fail, but it was something. As they finally settled down to sleep, Clara felt the familiar ember in her chest burning steady. Not hot and angry anymore. Focused, purposeful. Ashford had tried to break them. Instead, he'd forged them into something harder. The next morning, a rider approached just after dawn. Clara had her rifle ready before she recognized him. Dutch, one of the neighbors who'd helped with the fire. "Got news," he said without preamble. "Marshal Carson arrested Pete Dawson last night. Found him drunk in a saloon 2 towns over. He's singing like a canary." Caleb stepped onto the porch. "What's he saying?" "That Ashford paid him $50 to burn your barn. Paid Charlie Root another $50 to do the house." Dutch's expression was grim. "Carson's got sworn testimony. He arrested Ashford an hour ago." Clara's knees went weak. "He's in jail?" "For now, but Judge Hendricks is already talking about bail. Ashford's lawyer is claiming Dawson's lying, looking for a deal. It's going to be a fight." "But there's actual charges now," Caleb said. "That's more than we had yesterday." "Yeah, just don't expect this to be over quick. Men like Ashford have money for lawyers, could drag on for months." Dutch tipped his hat. "Thought you'd want to know." After he left, Clara and Caleb looked at each other. "Months," Clara repeated, "while he's free on bail, able to send more people after us." "Maybe. Or maybe the arrest scared him enough to back off." Clara wanted to believe that. But she'd seen the look in Ashford's eyes. Men like him didn't back off. They just got sneakier. Still, for the first time in days, she felt something like hope. The system was slow and imperfect, but it was moving. Carson had done what he promised. Now they just had to survive long enough for justice to actually happen. They spent the next week in a strange kind of limbo, working on repairs to the house, keeping watch, waiting for news from town. Ashford made bail, as expected. But he didn't send anyone to the ranch, didn't make threats. The silence was almost worse than the attacks. "He's planning something," Clara said one evening. "This quiet isn't natural." Caleb agreed, but had no answers. They kept their rifles close and slept in shifts. The break came from an unexpected source. Sarah McCall rode in one afternoon with a woman Clara didn't recognize. Young, maybe 19, with the haunted look Clara recognized from her own reflection in Ashford's store. "This is Emma," Sarah said. "She works at the boarding house in Ashford's Landing. She's got something you need to hear." Emma's hands twisted in her lap as she spoke. "Mr. Ashford came to the boarding house 3 days ago. He was drinking, talking loud. I heard him tell someone he was done playing games. Said he was going to handle you both personally." Caleb's expression darkened. "What exactly did he say?" "That he'd tried doing things legal and it hadn't worked, so he was going back to old methods." Emma's voice shook. "He said people needed to remember who ran this territory, and that meant making examples." "Did he say when?" Clara asked. "Soon. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. I don't know exactly. Emma looked at them both. "I've seen what he does to people who cross him. I couldn't just let it happen without warning you." After Emma left with Sarah, Caleb and Clara looked at each other. "We could run," Caleb said. "Pack what's left, head north. Start over. Or we could end this. Tonight." He studied her face. "You mean go after him first?" "I mean stop waiting to be victims." Clara's voice was steady. "He's coming for us anyway. At least this way, we choose the ground." Caleb was quiet for a long time, then he nodded once. "All right, let's finish it." They didn't leave immediately. That would have been stupid, charging into town in broad daylight with half-formed plans and righteous anger. Instead, they waited for dark, preparing methodically like they were planning a cattle drive, not a confrontation that could end with them dead or in prison. Caleb cleaned both rifles, checked ammunition, loaded his revolver. Clara sharpened her knife, the one she'd first pulled on Ashford months ago. It felt heavier now. Or maybe she just understood its weight better. "We're not going there to kill him," Caleb said as he worked. "That's important. We go in with that intention, we're no better than he is." "So what's the plan?" We force a confession, get him on record admitting to the arson, the attacks, everything. Then we take that to Carson. He looked up. But if he comes at us with violence, we defend ourselves. Clear? Clear. They ate a cold dinner as the sun set, neither one particularly hungry, but knowing they needed the fuel. Clara kept catching herself touching the book pages she'd salvaged, her mother's handwriting a reminder of who she'd been before all this. Before Ashford, before the frontier, before she learned that survival sometimes meant becoming someone you didn't recognize. You scared? Caleb asked. Terrified. You? Yeah. He managed a tight smile. But I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for him to come back. They rode out under a half moon, moving quietly through the darkness. The trail to Ashford's Landing was familiar now. Clara had ridden it enough times with Caleb on supply runs, always tense, always watching for threats. Tonight felt different. Tonight they were the threat. The town appeared as scattered lights in the valley below. Quiet this time of night, most people already asleep. Only the saloon showed real signs of life, yellow light spilling from its windows along with the tinny sound of a piano. They tied their horses at the edge of town and approached on foot, keeping to the shadows. Caleb had scouted before and knew Ashford lived in rooms above the general store, his store. The one Clara had spent 3 years working in, the one that still held all those marks on the wooden beam. The thought of going back inside made her stomach clench, but she pushed the feeling down and followed Caleb to the back entrance. The door was locked. Caleb pulled out a thin piece of metal and worked it into the lock with practiced ease. Clara raised an eyebrow. Had to break into my own barn once when the lock froze, he whispered. You learn things. The lock clicked. They slipped inside. The storage room was exactly as Clara remembered. Crates stacked haphazardly, the smell of dust and old wood, that wooden beam with its hundreds of scratches marking days of captivity. Her marks. She stared at them in the dim moonlight filtering through the window, feeling something twist in her chest. You all right? Caleb's hand touched her shoulder. Yeah, just ghosts. They moved through the store toward the stairs leading to Ashford's rooms. Every step felt too loud. Clara's heart hammered so hard she was sure it would wake the whole town. But they reached the stairs without incident. Caleb went first, rifle ready. Clara followed, knife in one hand and her own smaller gun, a revolver Caleb had taught her to shoot, in the other. The stairs creaked under their weight. They froze, listening. Nothing. At the top was a narrow hallway with 2 doors. Light showed under one of them. Voices murmured inside. Ashford's and someone else's. Clara and Caleb exchanged glances. They hadn't planned for him to have company. Caleb moved to the door and listened. Then he held up 2 fingers. 2 people inside. He mouthed a question. Ready? Clara nodded, even though she wasn't. Would never be. Caleb kicked the door open. The room exploded into chaos. Ashford lurched up from a chair where he'd been drinking with another man. One of the hired guns from before, Clara realized. The man went for his weapon. Caleb's rifle swung toward him. Don't! The man froze, hence hand on his gun, but not drawing. Smart. Caleb had the drop on him, and they both knew it. Ashford's face cycled through shock, fear, and then rage. You can't just break into my home. This is... Shut up. Clara's voice surprised her with its steadiness. She moved into the room, gun trained on Ashford. Sit down, both of you. You have no right. Caleb cocked his rifle. The sound was very loud in the small room. She said, sit down. They sat. The hired gun looked between Caleb and the door, clearly calculating odds and not liking what he found. Ashford just stared at Clara with undisguised hatred. You stupid girl. Do you have any idea what you've done? Breaking and entering, threatening an innocent man in his own home? Innocent! Clara laughed, and it sounded harsh even to her own ears. You burned our barn, burned our house, sent men to attack us. You're about as innocent as a rabid dog. You can't prove any of that. Pete Dawson says different. He's already given a sworn statement to Marshal Carson. Caleb hadn't lowered the rifle. But we're not here about what we can prove in court. We're here about what happens next. Ashford's expression turned calculating. What do you want? We want you to leave us alone, Clara said. Permanently. No more attacks, no more threats, no more hired men. You go about your business, we go about ours, and we never cross paths again. And if I refuse, then we make sure everyone in the territory knows exactly what kind of man you are. Caleb's voice was flat. Every contract you've manipulated, every person you've cheated, every law you've bent. We've already started gathering evidence. Right now, it's just a pile of paper. But we can turn it into something that destroys you. It was a bluff. They hadn't actually gathered much yet. But Ashford didn't know that. Clara watched his face and saw the moment the fear took root. You're lying. Are we? Clara stepped closer. How many people have you screwed over, Thomas? How many contracts like mine with interest rates that compound until the debt's impossible to pay? How many fake charges? How many threats? You really think none of them would talk if someone started asking the right questions? Ashford's jaw worked. He looked at his hired gun, then back at them. What's to stop me from just having you both killed? Tonight. Right here. The hired gun shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Ashford, I didn't sign on for murder. You signed on for whatever I pay you for, Ashford snapped. No, sir. I signed on for intimidation work, not killing unarmed people in cold blood. The man stood slowly, hands visible. I'm out. Keep your money. He moved toward the door. Caleb let him pass. Once he was gone, the room felt smaller, more dangerous. Ashford stood, his face purple with rage. You think you've won? You think this changes anything? I own this town. The judge, the land office clerk, half the businessmen, they all owe me. You're nothing but hired help and a debtor. Who do you think people will believe? Maybe nobody, Clara said. But that's not really the point anymore. Then what is the point? The point is I'm done being afraid of you. She met his eyes directly, and something in her must have shown because Ashford actually took a step back. You spent 3 years making me feel worthless, telling me I was property, that I'd never be free, that I wasn't even really human. And I believed you. I let you make me small. Clara, Caleb's voice held a warning, but she didn't stop. But then I left, and I learned what it feels like to be treated like a person, to have choices, to fight back. She raised the gun slightly. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to write a confession, every crime you've committed against us. The arson, the threats, all of it. You're going to sign it and date it. I'll do no such thing. Then I'll shoot you. The words came out calm, matter of fact. Not to kill, just to hurt. And then Caleb will shoot you. And we'll keep shooting until you either write the confession or bleed out. Your choice. Ashford stared at her. You're bluffing. Clara pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet punched into the floorboard 3 inches from Ashford's boot. He yelped and stumbled backward, tripping over his chair. Next one's your kneecap, Clara said. Right. Ashford scrambled up, face white. You're insane, both of you. Caleb moved to a small desk in the corner and pulled out paper and a pen. He set them on the table. Right. Everything. Or she shoots again, and I don't think she's bluffing. Clara wasn't entirely sure she wasn't bluffing, but Ashford didn't need to know that. She kept the gun trained on him, hand steady, face blank. Ashford looked between them, seeming to realize for the first time that this wasn't going to end the way he'd planned, that he'd pushed too hard, burned too much, and now he was staring down the barrel of his own methods turned back on him. Slowly, he sat down at the table and picked up the pen. What do you want me to write? Caleb dictated, and Ashford wrote. Every attack, every hired arsonist, every threat. The words filled 2 pages. When he was done, his hand shook as he signed his name. There. You happy? His voice was bitter. It won't hold up in court. Written under duress. Don't need it to hold up in court, Caleb said, taking the papers. Just need it as insurance. You come after us again, these pages find their way to every newspaper in the territory. Your reputation dies, even if you don't end up in prison. Clara lowered her gun but didn't put it away. One more thing. My contract. The original one you sold to Caleb. Where is it? The land office has the official record. The original. I know you kept a copy. You kept copies of everything. She'd seen the files during her years working in the store. Ashford was meticulous about documentation when it served him. His eyes flickered toward a cabinet in the corner. Clara moved to it and started pulling out drawers. The third one held files, dozens of contracts arranged alphabetically. She found hers near the front. Clara Whitlock, $1,800, terms of servitude. Looking at it now, she could see all the ways it was designed to trap her. The interest rate that compounded daily. The vague language about reasonable expenses that let Ashford charge her for anything. The clause that extended the term if she failed to perform duties satisfactorily, with no definition of satisfactory. She'd signed this when she was 17 and desperate, hadn't understood what she was agreeing to. Clara took the contract and walked back to the table. Then she held it over the lamp flame and watched it catch fire. "What are you doing?" Ashford lunged forward. Caleb blocked him with the rifle. "Erasing a mistake," Clara said. She let the contract burn until it was ash, then dropped it on the floor. "That's done now." "You stupid girl, that changes nothing. The official record still exists." "I know, but that one was mine to destroy." She met his eyes, and it felt good. They backed toward the door, weapons still trained on Ashford. He stood by his table, face contorted with impotent rage, looking smaller somehow. More pathetic. Clara had spent so long fearing this man, seeing him as untouchable. Now she just saw someone weak and cruel who'd mistaken cruelty for strength. "If you come after us again," Caleb said quietly, "there won't be a third time. We won't come with guns to talk. We'll come with guns to finish. Understand?" Ashford said nothing, just stared. They left through the back entrance and made it to their horses without incident. Clara's hands started shaking as soon as they were mounted, all the adrenaline catching up at once. She'd just shot at a man, threatened to shoot him again, burned a legal document. "You all right?" Caleb asked as they rode out of town. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." They made it a few miles before Clara had to stop. She dismounted on shaky legs and leaned against a tree, breathing hard. Caleb gave her space, keeping watch while she processed. "I've never done anything like that before," she said eventually. "Threatened someone. Pulled the trigger meaning to scare them." "I know." "Does it get easier?" "No, you just get better at living with it." Caleb looked at her. "You did what you had to do. Ashford wasn't going to stop until someone made him." "But what if I liked it?" The question came out small. That moment when he was scared, when I had the power. What if part of me liked it? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "Then you're human. Doesn't make you like him, though. He likes hurting people for its own sake. You just wanted him to stop hurting you. There's a difference." Clara wanted to believe that. Wasn't entirely sure she did. But maybe that was okay. Maybe being unsure, questioning yourself, was what kept you from becoming the kind of person who did hurt people for fun. They rode through the night, reaching the ranch just as dawn broke. The burned barn and damaged house looked even worse in the morning light, a monument to everything they'd survived. But they'd survived. That counted for something. Over the next few days, they waited for retaliation that never came. No hired guns, no mysterious fires, no threats, just silence. A week later, Marshal Carson rode in with news. "Ashford left town," he said without preamble. "Packed up 3 days ago and headed east. Didn't say where he was going, but he sold the store to a wholesaler out of Denver." Clara felt something loosen in her chest. "He's really gone." "Looks like it. Word is he's relocating to Missouri, maybe Kentucky. Somewhere his reputation hasn't caught up with him yet." Carson studied them both. "You two wouldn't happen to know why he'd leave so suddenly, would you?" Caleb's expression stayed neutral. "Can't imagine." "Uh-huh." The marshal didn't look convinced, but he also didn't push. "Well, whatever the reason, he's gone. The arson charges are still pending, but without him here to prosecute, they'll probably get dropped. Pete Dawson already skipped town, probably scared Ashford would come after him for talking." "So that's it?" Clara asked. "It's over?" "Seems like." Carson tipped his hat. "You two take care, and maybe stay out of trouble for a while." After he left, Clara and Caleb stood in the yard, processing. Ashford was gone, really gone. The man who'd haunted them for months, who'd burned their property and threatened their lives, had just left. "I don't believe it," Clara said. "Believe it. Men like Ashford are cowards at heart. Once you prove you'll fight back, They find easier targets. Caleb looked at the burned barn. Doesn't fix what he destroyed, but at least we can rebuild without watching our backs. And rebuild they did. It took months. They hired help from neighboring ranchers, Dutch and Sarah and others who'd seen what Ashford had done and wanted to help set it right. The new barn went up stronger than the first, with proper bracing and a stone foundation. The house took longer, but by late summer they had walls again, a roof that didn't leak, rooms that smelled like fresh pine instead of smoke. Caleb kept his promise about the contract. Every month, $50 came off Clara's debt. She kept her own ledger now, tracking every payment. Watching the number shrink felt like watching a weight lift, ounce by ounce. 2 years. That's what they'd agreed on. 2 years until she was free. But somewhere in the rebuilding, in the daily work of making the ranch profitable again, something shifted. Clara stopped counting days, started thinking in seasons instead. The summer they fixed the irrigation, the winter they added 10 head of cattle, the spring they planted the expanded garden. Caleb changed too. Not dramatically, but in small ways. He smiled more, laughed at her jokes, started asking her opinion on ranch decisions instead of just telling her what needed doing. They'd become partners in truth, not just in name. One evening, about 18 months into the 2-year contract, they were sitting on the rebuilt porch watching the sunset. Clara was mending a shirt, Caleb was working on a new bridle. Comfortable silence between them. "I've been thinking," Caleb said suddenly. "Dangerous," he smiled. "About the contract. We're 6 months from the end." Clara's hands stilled. "I know. I want to pay it off now. All of it." She looked at him. "Why?" "Because I don't want you staying here because you have to. I want you staying because you choose to." He set down the bridle. "And I can't ask you what I want to ask while that contract's still hanging over you." Clara's heart kicked into a strange rhythm. "What do you want to ask?" Caleb turned to face her fully. "I want to ask if you'd consider staying, not as an employee, as a partner, equal stake in the ranch, equal say in decisions." He paused. "And maybe, eventually, something more than partners." The words settled between them like a proposal, which Clara supposed they were. Not marriage, not yet, but the possibility of it. The question of whether what they'd built together was worth building a life on. She thought about this girl she'd been 2 years ago. Broken, afraid, owned by a man who treated her like livestock. That girl would never have imagined this, a home of her own choosing, work that mattered, someone who saw her as an equal. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "All of it." Caleb's smile was genuine and relieved. "Yeah? Yeah. But I want to finish paying off the contract the way we agreed. 6 more months. I need to know I did that myself." He nodded, understanding. "Fair enough. 6 months, then we renegotiate everything." They shook on it, and Clara felt something shift in her chest. That ember that had burned through everything, through Ashford's cruelty, through fires and threats, through fear and rage, finally settled into something steady, not extinguished, just transformed into something that could sustain her instead of consume her. The 6 months passed quickly. Clara worked harder than ever, not because she had to, but because she wanted to prove to herself that she could meet this deadline, that she could finish what she'd started. On the last day of her contract, Caleb presented her with the official papers from the land office, stamped and marked "Paid in Full." Clara held them, feeling the weight of freedom in her hands. "How does it feel?" Caleb asked. "Lighter." She looked up at him. "And terrifying. I've been somebody's property for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to just be me." "Then we figure it out together." They did. Clara became a full partner in the ranch, her name added to the deed. They expanded their operations, bought more cattle, improved the irrigation. The ranch prospered. And somewhere in the daily rhythm of working side by side, the partnership deepened into something neither of them spoke about directly, but both understood. It was Caleb who finally said it, one evening almost a year after the contract ended. They were in the barn, working late to birth a difficult calf. Clara had her hands inside the cow, feeling for the calf's position, while Caleb held the lantern and talked her through it. "Little to the left," he said. "You feel the legs?" Got them. It's turned wrong, though. Need to rotate it. She worked carefully, sweat dripping down her face. The cow lowed in distress. Finally, she felt the calf shift into position. Ready? On three? I pull. They counted together. Clara pulled. The calf came in a rush of fluid and relief. It lay still for a terrifying moment, then shook its head and took a rattling breath. The cow turned immediately to start cleaning it. Clara sat back in the straw, exhausted and elated. We did it. You did it, Caleb corrected. He set down the lantern and sat beside her. You know, when I first saw you in Ashford's store, I never imagined you'd be the kind of person who could do this. Neither did I. I love that about you, that you became someone you didn't know you could be. He said it casually, but the words hung in the air. Actually, I just love you. Figured I should probably say that out loud. Clara looked at him, this hard man who'd bought her freedom without knowing it, who'd taught her to fight and shoot and stand her ground, who'd rebuilt a life beside her and never asked for anything she wasn't willing to give. I love you too, she said. Have for a while now. Just didn't think I had the right to say it while the contract was still active. And now? Now I'm free to love whoever I want, and I choose you. They married in the spring, a small ceremony with just the neighbors who'd helped them rebuild. No grand celebration, just honest vows and a commitment to keep building the life they'd started. Sarah McCall cried. Dutch got drunk and made a rambling toast about stubborn people deserving each other. It was perfect. Years passed. The ranch grew. They added more land, more cattle, built a new barn that was even better than the ones before it, had arguments about money and decisions and how to handle difficult winters, made up over dinner and morning coffee and the quiet understanding that came from surviving hard things together. They heard about Ashford occasionally, bits of gossip filtering west. He'd settled in Kentucky, opened another store, was up to his old tricks with contracts and debt. Clara felt bad for whoever fell into his trap next, but she'd learned you couldn't save everyone. You could only save yourself and the people close enough to reach. One day, about 5 years after the fires, Clara was working in the expanded garden when she heard a wagon approaching. She looked up to see a young woman driving, maybe 18 or 19, with the hollow-eyed look Clara recognized immediately, the look of someone running from something. The girl pulled up near the house. "Excuse me, I'm looking for work. Any kind. I can clean, cook, work livestock. I'm a hard worker, I promise." Clara straightened, wiping dirt from her hands. "You running from something?" The girl's face shuddered. "Why would you think that?" "Because I recognize the look. It's the same one I had 6 years ago." Clara moved closer. "What's your name?" "Annie. Annie Moss." "Well, Annie, we could use some help around here. Season's busy, but I'm not interested in owning anyone or holding contracts or any of that. You work, you get paid fair wages. You get your own room with a lock that works from the inside. And if you want to leave, you leave. That acceptable?" Annie's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Completely. We've got a room ready, meals included, and the work's hard but honest." Clara smiled. "Plus, I'll teach you to shoot. Never know when that'll come in handy." Annie looked at the ranch. The sturdy buildings, the cattle grazing peacefully, the mountains rising behind it all. Then she looked at Clara, seeming to see something there that gave her courage. "Yes, ma'am. I'd like that very much." Clara showed her to the spare room they'd built onto the house. As Annie looked around in wonder, at the real bed, the window, the actual privacy, Clara thought about the girl she'd been, the one who'd laughed at the wrong moment and paid for it with blood, the one who'd been sold like cattle and counted marks on a wooden beam. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger, harder, but also more generous. Someone who understood that survival wasn't the same as victory. Real victory was building something worth protecting, then actually protecting it. Caleb came in from the north pasture that evening and found Clara making dinner with Annie's help. He raised an eyebrow. "We're hiring now?" "We're helping," Clara corrected, "like people helped us." He smiled and kissed her cheek. "That's my girl." "Woman," she corrected. "My woman," he amended. "Even better." They ate dinner together, the three of them plus Dutch and Sarah who'd stopped by to help with the herd. Stories got told, laughter filled the room. Clara looked around at faces lit by lamplight, at food they'd grown themselves. at a home they'd built from ash and determination. The frontier hadn't gotten softer. It was still brutal, still unforgiving, still a place where people like Ashford could thrive if no one stopped them. But it was also a place where people could reinvent themselves, where someone who'd been property could become an owner, where the girl who'd been beaten for laughing could build a life full of it. After dinner, Clara stepped onto the porch. The sun had set, leaving the sky bruised purple and orange. The smell of smoke from the cook fire mingled with the clean scent of mountain air. Somewhere in the barn, a horse nickered. Caleb joined her, sliding an arm around her waist. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their land settle into darkness. "You ever think about that day?" Caleb asked eventually. "When I first saw you in Ashford's store?" "Sometimes. You?" "All the time. I think about what might have happened if I'd just walked away. Left you there." "You didn't, though." "No, I didn't." He pulled her closer. "Best $1,200 I ever spent." Clara laughed, elbowing him gently. "Romantic." "I try." They stood there as the first stars appeared, two people who'd been bent by the world but refused to break, who'd learned that sometimes the only way to survive was to fight back, who'd built something real from the ruins of what others tried to destroy. Inside the house, Annie was probably getting ready for bed in a room of her own, with a lock that worked from the inside and a future that wasn't written yet. The ranch would be there tomorrow, work waiting, always more to do. But tonight, Clara just breathed, free, loved, home. The ember in her chest had finally become what she'd needed all along, not a spark of defiance keeping her alive through hell, but a steady flame warming a life worth living. And if the frontier wanted to take that away again, it would have to come through her and Caleb both. They'd learned how to fight. More importantly, they'd learned what was worth fighting for. The story of the girl who was silenced for laughing had ended. In its place was the story of a woman who'd learned that laughter, joy, and freedom weren't gifts someone gave you. They were things you fought for, built yourself, and protected with everything you had. And Clara Rourke, no longer Whitlock, no longer owned, no longer afraid, had done exactly that.